Today I'll be talking to Korey Mack. He's the owner of Hootendanny's Party Rentals, and he's going to be telling me exactly how he's grown his business based on repeat customers for sustainable growth. Okay, so here's his story, and definitely check this out if you're in the Dallas DSW area. If you need any party rentals, he's your guy.
So, Corey, can you tell me a little bit about how where you grew up? Like, what kind of just not anything about the business, but like, tell me about yourself. What did you want to do when you grew
Yeah.
up? Something like that.
Yeah, I grew up in Dallas, Texas, little part of Dallas called Oak Cliff. I was born in Los Angeles, actually, but moved to Dallas. My grandparents adopted me, and I was very fortunate to be raised by the combination of my grandparents, my mom, my dad, my aunt, just a lot of family members. I've attended the school where I currently work, the St. Mark's School of Texas, since second grade all the way through graduating in 2000.
Wow.
I don't know what I wanted to do when I when I grew up. Um, there were many interests. Went to school originally to be a pilot, so aviation technology was really something that was a passion, still a passion of mine, but kind of gave the piloting um, call up when I got done with my studies at Purdue University and came back to Texas to pursue my degree from East Texas State A&M. And so getting into kind of a side business and doing things on the side has been really just a function, I think, of observing my dad and my grandfather, who are both entrepreneurs. My late grandfather, he passed away about 12 years ago, but just seeing them growing up and taking pride in their work, connecting people, employing people who, um, may be down on their luck or need an opportunity to help
That's really
support their
great.
families and things like that. So it's been nice to have a firsthand glimpse into entrepreneurship through my own family's experience.
That's amazing. I've noticed a lot of people so far that I've interviewed have an entrepreneurial family member or a background in entrepreneurship. I think it's really helpful to see someone that's doing it successfully and kind of take some of the things that they've done and then incorporate it into your own business. What made you get into, you do bounce house rentals and party events. What made you get into that then?
Yeah, it started off as DJing. My dad's a radio DJ, uh,
Cool.
regional radio DJ in the Southwest, and I was just basically playing with his turntables when I was a student, probably in my teenage years. And instead of, I don't know, he could have gone a lot of different ways, but instead of giving me an allowance as a teenager, he basically bought me a new DJ setup with CD changers, a mixer, speakers, and mentioned me on the radio a couple of times. And I've stayed busy, seems like ever since. And so that was kind of the way that he passed on that entrepreneurship to me through equipping me on the front end. And also, same thing when I got into the bounce house business. My dad was my lead investor. We went in proportionally on the first five bounce houses that I bought, and then I've been
Cool.
able to expand the business since there. So, and to your point, it's always good to have a family member who understands the struggle that small business owners go through, especially when they're starting up, and can kind of help you try to achieve that firm footing in the early going. And then, we still talk about it. I think I've been in the process of trying to sell the business potentially for quite a few years, and he's been great counsel, my dad, to just, you don't necessarily have to sell if you don't have a buyer who's willing to pay you what you think it's worth. And so I'm grateful for his counsel and his
Hmm.
care and his willingness to share his own experience. He owns a restaurant now, still does the radio DJ thing. He'll probably be retiring in about 4 years from the radio, but
Wow.
yeah, he's starting his third restaurant down in Waxahachie, which is just south of Dallas here. And so it's great to continue to have, a resource in my family to resort or counsel or consult when I'm having challenges or whatnot.
Absolutely. That was kind of going to be my next question. Like, what exactly, like, who led you through this journey? But it sounds like your dad and your grandpa were very much pivotal in your journey of becoming an entrepreneur. The radio thing is really cool. Like, to have, somebody talking about your business on the radio that gets you in front of people, that's a really great thing, especially because you're dealing a lot with, the community. And when people are booking events, you might be listening to radio and then they think of you. So that's a really cool thing to have. I love that. I didn't know about that. That's really
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would say it's certainly been my dad who's helped me through, and then just I think just teaching teaching me at a young age like how to treat the customer well, and how to find customer needs that may be latent, and help identify those, and figure out a way to create value in a customer's mind, and that goes above and beyond just selling a product. I mean, I think
Yeah.
seeing my dad and my grandfather, I think it's more of like I want to be an extension of my customer's family. I mean, they're inviting me into their home. I'm literally setting up something that can be a lot of fun for their child, but at the same time, there are a lot of risks involved. I mean, I talk through some of those risks, or all of those risks, as much as I can with the customer. And so I think there's a lot of trust in any type of business with a customer, but specifically one where you're delivering that service in their home for their child. And so I feel very fortunate to have the foundation in interacting with and serving the customer, which has been my family experience up to this point.
Yeah, that's awesome. Was there ever a point where you realized that like you were getting calls based on your reputation alone?
Yeah, I think referral calls. I got, people generally state who they got my number from if they were referred from someone,
Mhm.
and I love that. And the other ones are when you're doing a party for a family and they call you when their other child has a party. So you kind of feel, at least I made a strong impression if they want me to come
Mhm.
back for the daughter's party, or the younger son's party, or whatever that may be. And so I have a lot of repeat business, and I have a lot of families that, once they understand that dealing with me is more than just the product. The product is like convenience, trust, reliability, those sort of things. Word tends to spread among families. I know moms do a lot of parents in general, but moms do a lot of talking of where'd
Yep.
you get this, or where do you do that? Moms have this kind of almost cultish like group of like how they carry on and manage the household and the kids and all manner of things. And so I think I've taken a page from what the radio stations uh kind of target market is, which is females age 18 to 34, and said, hey, those are really kind of the same folks that I'm trying to get to. Those are the folks that are going to be renting these bounce houses
Mhm.
for their children or for their friend's child. And so, just trying to make sure to serve them as best I can.
Yeah. I actually would even go like older than that. I'm 38 and I have a
Hmm.
four-year-old, an 8-year-old, and 9-year-old now.
Yep.
So I feel like a lot of people are having kids a little bit later too. And so they have these young children and they're in their 40s. I would make sure you put them on your list too, because those people are looking for entertainment. And a lot of them, since they're older, maybe they have a little more money because they're more established. But that's really awesome that you're doing that. I love that. So have you become a lot busier now that you've proven that your reputation is good? People are referring you, you're in part of the moms groups, so you're getting this kind of traction around. Do you feel like you're busier?
I do. I feel like busy, the level of interest in the business has varied, not just, like quantitatively varied. I think, I'm busier, but I have institutional customers that keep coming back. So, just working with like gymnastics places and daycares, and, the folks that rent multiple times in a year or in a season and then come back the next year and do the same thing. That's been a not a deliberate push, but I've been blessed to have a couple of accounts that are recurring that have honestly helped me, keep the business alive, but not feel so financially stressed to want to sell it, because part of the value is I have these established customers,
Hmm.
and not just, a whole bunch of products that I'm trying to sell to the next.
Right. And predictable revenue is really nice because you know that they're going to come every year. It's also like 10 times easier to get a sale from a customer that already knows, likes, and trusts you, as opposed to trying to get new people that, might be on the fence, or you have to sell them a little bit harder. But these are people that you probably don't really have to sell to at all. You don't have to do any convincing. They essentially already know they're going to buy when they call you. So there's not as much of a sales cycle. So I think that's really smart that you're doing that. Like, if you could get in with some of these contract schools, or, other places that do it, then that's pretty much guaranteed money.
Yeah, and again, it's kind of happened organically, but to your point, as a business owner, predictable sales revenue is like, it just helps in so many ways dealing with all the other uncertainties of running a business. Those are things that you can count on and kind of build around, which has been really helpful in the past. This
Right.
one particular customer that rents from me every from Memorial Day to Labor Day just
Wow.
opened up a second location. And so, you have your big institutional customer, and then they decide to expand their business. And ultimately that, I've got to now I've doubled that doubled how busy I am, but there's also logistical concerns and things like that. To your point, those also present not only predictable revenue, but a platform to get to other parents who already know and trust my product through presenting it through their son or daughter's gymnastics or daycare.
Right. And I think that most businesses would want to know that you have the proper safety and stuff going on. So if I were a parent, I would definitely trust you, because I would say, okay, I think that my daughter's gymnastics is not just going to hire some fly by night type of person. They're going to hire someone reputable. So I think that's another way to say, like, I am I am reputable. I care about your safety. I care about your kids, because you're right. It is like you're dealing with children, and you're dealing with potentially a situation that could get out of hand.
Yeah, it's again been blessed to have those relationships, and then there's, kind of piggybacking off the trust and reputation of the family dealing with someone already, and then, trying to maintain that standard, or, surpass that standard however I
Mhm.
can by keeping safety the main thing.
Good, I love that. Do you feel like as you've gotten busier, it's hard to keep the business the type of business that you set it out to be, or do you feel like you're managing the busyness well?
That's a great question, because when I started this business, I would say I started this business two different times. Once with the DJ thing back in high school that I referred to, and then in 2015, buying 5 bounce houses and then kind of growing it from there. When I started back in 2015, I just saw this as a side gig, make some weekend money, supplement my income. Um, over time, realizing that I actually do need to hire people, whether those are independent contractors or employees. Like, there are other folks that are needed to undertake these endeavors to serve these
Mhm.
customers. And so that's been um, that was I don't know why I didn't anticipate that. I was a lot younger, and I was like, I'll do it all. And so over time, I've realized that in order to maintain that level of service that I want to maintain, and serve the customers, if I got two or three more jobs this weekend, I might not be able to do those if it were only me. But now
Mhm.
that I have, 3 to 5 guys at any time that are always helping, and they have full-time jobs as well. So these, it's like, find someone else who's interested in a side gig, who may
Yep.
not want to start their own side gig, but may want to get some extra money, and that sort of thing, but also will represent the business well, prioritize safety, prioritize customer experience the same way that I do. I think that would be the major change in expectation, or the thing that I've seen that's different than what I expected, than what has actually happened. I think that's any business owner that that has been doing whatever they do for some time. I think would have evolving expectations, and figure out, what about this is different than what I expected when I went into it. And so that's a question I'm asking myself quite often.
I ask myself that question all the time too, so I completely understand that. I think sometimes you maybe go in with, just not really knowing, or not
Mhm.
really, I guess, maybe too confident in a way, like, "I could do it all, I could take it on," but then again, like, do you really want to? Is your time better spent doing something else, like actually working on the business? And that kind of leads me to my next question of what about the business that you don't love that maybe isn't a moneymaker but still has to be done?
Well, great question. Cleaning the warehouse, making sure that inventory is in a reliable place so that, I know where everything is in the warehouse, but when I employ someone and give them the keys and say, they need the customer wants this and that, I don't need to. It's better it's better if everything has its place and returns back to its place. So I think that's been the thing that's so worth it. But when you're rushing and you've got 5 or 10 jobs and you're trying to get everything in, sometimes you just kind of get it in the warehouse or it's raining outside. Sometimes it's like get it in the warehouse, lock it up, we'll come back tomorrow and deal with that. Well, COVID actually helped me realize the value of always cleaning the units when they're up
Mm.
and cleaning the units in front of the customer. So, um, we try to keep them as clean as possible. But during COVID, I realized that there's extra value in cleaning the unit in front of the customer. So that we made that part of our operating procedure is even if a unit's clean, because going in, having the unit clean prior to dropping off was the motivation was I'm saving time.
Mhm.
Ultimately, I'll get more deliveries done. Well, it turns out the customer may trust that it's clean, but they really appreciate when they see you walking in there with Lysol and wiping it down an extra time before their kids are about to get on it. So
Smart.
in seeing how much value was created there, we just started making that part of our process. And we also make cleaning the unit on the premises after they're done part of our process so that they see us doing that on a regular basis. So I think that's been one marked change in the way that we operate. That if you'd asked me when I got into this, I would not have seen the value in doing double work essentially. It's like, well, I'm going to clean it anyway. I'm going to clean it on my own time anyway. Well,
Mhm.
there's value in not only having a clean product, but there's value in the customer seeing that you are going to take the time to make sure it's absolutely ready to go for my child, for my kids when it's in my house, on my property.
I like that. That's really smart that you've kind of taken feedback from your customers and turning it into your process. Like it's costs you no money to do this. It's just an extra feature of your service that I feel like sets you apart from other, companies because maybe someone had an experience where another company came and, the equipment wasn't clean or maybe they didn't clean it on premises. And you're right, during COVID, people were kind of nervous about cleanliness. So just taking that extra step sets you apart from other people. That's really smart. I like that. And I like the organization piece too of you said about the warehouse. I think it's really important to have like these processes that you're doing or places where things belong so that nobody's confused along the way. And if you have other guys going out there, you can't constantly be answering questions about where's this or what that is, or if it takes them longer to find it, then you show up
Mm,
late, then
right. You got
you've
another
you've
problem.
hurt your credibility. Exactly. I like that. All right, my
Yeah.
next question is what does your after hours look like? Do you take calls after hours? Do you have a lot of after hours calls?
I take calls whenever I'm around my phone and I can hear it and I can answer. So from an inbound sales um, perspective, I'm pretty much, you know, 24/7 or 16/7. Whenever I'm awake, I'm certainly willing to take that call. And you'd be surprised. I mean, I've gotten calls, texts at all hours of the day. Sometimes Saturday morning is like it used to be when during COVID when we kind of first met with Strategic before it was connected. We I would get calls every Saturday morning, frantic. I booked a bounce house with this person, but they're not answering my calls. I don't know if they'll be here. Or, I thought my wife was going to book the bounce house, but she thought I was going to do it. And so I'm scrambling, man. How can you help me? My son's having his party. We got all these people coming over and we don't have a bounce house. So it's we had to start charging rush fees and things like that because you were getting such a volume of calls with people who wanted same day service. Again, good problem to have,
Mm-hmm.
but how do you serve that customer in a way that doesn't diminish the quality and the level of service that you're giving to your current customers became the real challenge. And so things like rush fees and helping manage their expectations. And it got to the point where I would just put an extra bounce house on the truck. I'd
Mm-hmm.
calculate it and say, I'm not losing that much in terms of gas efficiency. And if I've got the extra one, if I don't sell it, no big deal. More often than not, that extra bounce house at some point during the day, someone would call me and need a bounce house for whatever reason. And so it ended up being another part of how we used to operate.
Wow. I mean, it really goes to show you that a lot of companies out there are not really doing the right thing by their customers. If they're not answering the phone, then it makes people worried. And if they're not showing up, then people are stuck in a bad situation. And I feel like that is a benefit to you. If you're answering the phone all the time and you're able to get to them quicker, it means that you're probably winning over a lot of jobs where someone else could have easily taken that, but they chose to not, be reliable, and
Hmm.
then it's like you get this person's job, then they call you the next time they need you because they know you've came through in a pickle when they're
Yep.
in a tough spot on a Saturday. So I love that you do that. That's a really good way to run your business. And even putting an extra bounce house on the truck, like to think about that is really smart. You know you're either going to sell it or if you don't, no big deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Thank you.
amazing.
Kind of
That's all.
it just kind of happened organically. So
Yeah. Has there ever been a job that you've lost because you didn't get to the phone fast enough?
no, but there was a job. I have a regular customer. Luckily, I didn't lose him. He asked his wife to book, and I think his wife typed in my business name in Google, but there was a sponsored ad. She ended up booking from someone else. I was certainly disappointed, but he's booked from me subsequent to that event. So I know he's still with me, but it kind of maybe think a little bit. And what's the visibility look like online? Are there ways that I can engage with customers who don't know who I am already,
Hmm.
and that sort of thing? And some customers, not because I didn't get there fast enough, but you know, we went out of our way one time. This is the only job I've ever refunded. It was worth the refund because I won't do business with this customer again. Every demand we met, we even asked that she not plug other things up to the bounce house because that could make the bounce house overload the circuit, which the customer did, and we ended up bringing another unit. Turns out that the electricity wouldn't even take that, so we brought a generator. After going through all that for that birthday party, she was dissatisfied, and again, for someone who doesn't refund just because I've never been asked, it was almost like I was hesitant to do it because I had never refunded a job, and I wanted that kind of meant something to me. But to avoid, further, like, her writing a bad review or telling a whole bunch of people, like, that was an easy one to do. And I don't do this all the time, but um, I have a customer whose son left a shoe in my bounce house, and I never found it. We looked and never found it, but I said, "What's $30 to buy a pair of shoes to
Hmm.
replace for this kid?" So I got the kid's shoe size, bought the shoes, sent them over, and you know I don't think she'll be going to anybody else for her next bounce house need because that was just an opportunity to go above and beyond and try to serve her and let her know that I valued her as a customer.
Of course, that was a $30 lead. Not so
Yeah,
bad.
yeah, worth.
Absolutely. And I think you're right. Above and beyond, that's really important. People remember that. And people also remember the bad things. So that woman that,
Mhm.
went a little crazy definitely did not deserve a refund. But I think in your case, it made sense. However much you lost on it, you didn't get a negative review. You didn't have to deal with her, going on
Mhm.
social media and telling the moms group never to book with you again.
Yep.
So I think that that makes a lot of sense. And in some cases, it's kind of like, okay, well, listen, like, here's your money back. So I think
Yeah.
that's smart.
Yeah, as entrepreneurs, we got to make a lot of decisions about, what's the opportunity
Mhm.
cost of not making this decision? And ultimately, sometimes you feel like it's in your best interest to do something that might not be your first inclination when you look at the whole picture. So, that's what we do as small business owners all day long.
Mhm. That's very, very true. All right. So, what keeps you going despite all of the after-hour calls and the admin and everything else that you're dealing with? What keeps you going?
My family, my three kids, Elijah, Nia, and Ezekiel. I want this business to be something that they can learn how to speak to adults, how they can learn work ethic, the techniques of how to set up a bounce house would be cool too. But ultimately, I grew up, like I said, in my dad's business and my grandfather's business. And though I hated it at the time, I realized that it taught me a lot. Taught me a lot of things that school will not teach children. And, for me, it was through that context that I learned valuable lessons that I want to impart to my children. And so whenever, dealing with adversity or, do you really want to keep doing this? I just think about them and the impact that I hope this will have on them long past the time that I'm here. So, and even on their children.
I think it definitely will. Not only is it a head start in dealing with what they want to do when they get older to get a little bit of experience, but I think like having like you had an entrepreneurial role model to show you the ways, like even if they don't want to necessarily go into the same business, but if they
Mhm.
want to do something different, they can ask you, "Hey dad, like what would you do in this situation?" My dad owned a landscaping company my whole life. So I had a situation with him where I had a client that was very behind on their payments, and I was like, "Dad, what would you do for this?" And he was like, "Just you shouldn't serve them anymore." Like that's it. So I think that's really helpful to have that for them and to have you. They're lucky to have that because you're right. In school, they kind of just teach you to be a worker and that's it. Like work for someone else, and you never have this opportunity to do anything else. But if you think about having sorry, that's my alarm thing. When you learn it from someone else, you learn there's like really an unlimited amount of potential out there. You just have to know how to find it and how to bring those customers to you. And I feel like it sounds like you've definitely found that part of it.
Yeah, it's a continual search. I mean, you find it and then you realize you haven't actually found all of it. Still, I think that's part of being a small business owner and a reflective person is not being complacent. And how do you handle success is I think an important part of life, just as well as how you handle failure. And so it's always, I'm always thinking about where am I right now and where am I trying to go and what do I need to do to get there? And then along the process as well, kind of tracing your steps and finding that you've actually achieved some milestones. Keeping not living too much in the past or too much in the future, being grounded in today, but also being aware that today is merely a point in the middle of the journey, and I'm still going somewhere. Defining that
Yeah.
and redefining that is important.
Where do you see your business in like 5 years from now?
Hopefully in the hands of my children in more substantive ways than it is now. My oldest will be turning 18 in 5 years. Wow, it's crazy. He's 12 right now. He'll be 13 in about a month and a half. So in 5 years, I see him taking his brother and sister in one truck, and
Hmm.
maybe I'm in another truck, and maybe another employee, but I see them taking on a lot more of this responsibility on the weekends in order to make the money that they want to go do the things that they want to do with their friends. I mean, that
Hmm.
was kind of the motivation for me. It's like, you want to go to the mall? You don't get an allowance. You got to go work for it. So I could see the same thing. And maybe my daughter doesn't want to do all the heavy lifting necessarily, but she loves music, and so
Hmm.
she might specialize on the DJ side a little bit more. Even my older son might specialize on the DJ side a little bit more. But since he's first to turn 18, he's gonna be the first driver for start the party. That's not me, you know.
Yeah. No, that makes a ton of sense. What was I going to say? I was going to say, like, I lost my train of thought completely.
Yeah.
Sorry. I was
All
like, I
good.
had this whole thing. I was gonna say there's even like admin work to be done. Like there's so many things
Yeah.
about a business that you could have them do. So if they find something that they're good at or they really enjoy, then you can definitely have them do that part of it. And I love that concept of no allowance. I'm trying to impart this in my children too. I'm like, you have to empty the dishwasher if you want to go do that thing you want to do. And it's
Hmm.
been, I feel like she's starting to learn, okay, I don't just get whatever I want whenever I want it. And I think that's what honestly teaches kids to be responsible and to understand that you need to do something to get money. It doesn't just happen and you have to put
Yep.
some effort into it. So I think that's a really good role model for your kids.
Thank you. Thank you.
What would you say that you're most proud of? What would your best customers say about you?
I think I'm most proud of just simply being able to run a legitimate business. Certainly not perfect, but it's yeah, I'm proud of where it is and where it's going. And if I had to like, pin down a moment, um I have some n- n- I have some clients that are fairly famous. And so
Cool.
having done a bounce house for the starting quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys. He's now a broadcaster, Tony Romo.
Oh, I've
That was
heard
a
of
big
him.
moment. That was a big
Wow.
moment when I pulled up. I think one of the folks that helps take care of their kids was the one who booked it, so I didn't anticipate anything until I drove up to the home and started looking around and talking, and really I felt terrible because they had a big placemat in front of their door, like a doormat that you wipe your feet on with a big R. And I remember asking Candace Romo, I said, "Are you related to Joan Rivers?" And she was like, "No, but my son's name is Rivers." And that's all she said. And I was like, "Okay." And it wasn't until I got back to school and I saw the check and it said, Candace and Tony Romo on there that I
Wow.
realized that I just dropped off a bounce house that, one of my favorite players of all time. And certainly the Cowboys are my favorite team of all time in football. And now that's a full circle moment because Tony and Candace send their son to the school that I teach at, and I'm going to be coaching him next year as the football coach. He's going to be on my football team. So
Wow.
it's exciting to have be able to share that moment back with them. And you know there's a lot of there are a lot of interesting like moments like that in the past, but that's certainly one that stands out to me is like, wow, how did they find you? They can certainly get their bounce house from anyone, but and that's again thanks to all the work that you have done through strategic leads and connected. They found me through all those efforts that we've worked together and collaborated on.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's your reputation, honestly. I think that, I like working with people that have a good reputation. It really helps because when you give someone a lead or you help them to get more leads, if they can't follow through with that reputation piece, it doesn't really compound
Yeah.
because then you always have to start fresh with new leads. But when you can foster these relationships with people, and, now that you're going to be the football coach, now you're always going to be the one to get the phone call for the bounce houses or the parties. And I'm sure they're going to have more parties
Yeah.
going forward. Yep, that's a lot of pressure on you to be the football coach.
I know. Luckily, it's only for eighth grade. It's only for one
Perfect.
year, and then he'll move on to the high school and varsity. I just actually I've been the JV head coach, and I'm stepping back to coach eighth grade so that I have time for the business, for family, and other things. So it's been bittersweet. I love coaching the older guys, but Saturday is a big day in the business for us, and
Yeah.
the varsity has film and workouts and things like that, and at the middle school level, once we're done on Thursday, we watch film on Friday and have the weekends on to ourselves. So that's going to allow me to give more attention to where it needs to go, which is to the business and getting to that 5 year mark, so that Elijah can jump in the truck and take his brother and sister, and I can be right behind them doing other deliveries, and we can kind of bond that way.
Yeah, I think that's really special too. And it's a good way to get to know your kids better and know them as adults.
Yep.
I think as kids, like sometimes they can be frustrating or maybe annoying, but I do think as they get older, you find that there's like a friendship and a respect, a mutual respect between them. And I think having, like, I want to have my daughter work with me too. I don't know what to do I don't know what she could do yet, but she'll do something. And I feel like,
Hmm.
she, just kind of coach them through it essentially. That's really sweet. I love that.
Yeah. It's a great feeling. I mean, it's a great feeling, especially when they initially are like, no, I don't want to do it. And then over time, like my youngest, Ezekiel, he's like, how can I help, Dad? How can I help? He wants to pull the tarp. He wants to carry 60-pound sandbags. I'm like, yeah, hold on, buddy. We can't, we got to wait on those. And so it's nice to have, it's certainly nice to have a vehicle to connect with your kids in different ways than just the traditional parent child relationship. And I
Hmm.
think running a small business as a parent is a great way to do that and have those connections.
I agree. And I work with a lot of family businesses, and I think it's kind of sweet when you see their kids becoming 18 or 16 or like around that age where they have an interest. It's kind of,
Mhm.
it's nice. It's like they have this example, they come in, but now they're treated as an adult also. They're treated with responsibilities, and you're an employee. You're not just like this kid that
Yep.
can do whatever. Like you have to work with the team. You have to be, on time. You have to do all of these things that a typical employee would do. And I think that's a
Mhm.
nice way of getting them used to that instead of just having you as a parent. You're a coworker essentially.
Yeah.
So
It's been a great dynamic.
that's awesome. All right, so here's a question I like asking. If your business ran perfectly smoothly, what would that look like to you?
Yeah, if the business ran perfectly smoothly, I would probably be employing a GM who does everything that I do. And, I could really focus on generating new customers and just, continuing to nurture the relationships that I have. And so as I think about that, and I am that general manager that I want to hire, it essentially forces me to articulate in writing what those processes are, what that effort is. Like, I'm like the king of like the one page plan for whatever initiative it is. It's like, all right, let me get one sheet of paper and I'm going to write down everything that I can. If it doesn't fit on this page, then I don't need to do it. But that's my reminder that I can pin up somewhere and say, look, this is the marketing effort. I'm going after um, you know, all the houses within a 1 mile radius of this gymnastics place, the new one and the old one. And so, looking at what that what are the tasks and roles of the position that I don't currently have all the resources to hire right now so that I can do those,
Hmm.
but be ready to hand them off. And in an ideal situation, there would certainly be a point person that would be running the day to day
Hmm.
so that I could focus on either helping articulate that value and trying to sell the business or looking at what the next phase for growth is. I've become an avid runner and
Awesome.
run a ha- I've only run one race, but I ran a half marathon last week, and to realize that every race has inflatables at the start line, and
Do they
there's
really?
yeah, so like the start tunnel is like an inflatable,
Oh, you're right.
not a bounce house, but it is an inflatable. So same concept, maybe there's, talking about what my business running ideally looks like instead of just pondering what it would look like to get into some different spaces. Like I saw a youth soccer league that uses inflatables to cordon off the field so that when the kids kick the soccer ball like errantly, it just hits the tube and comes right back on the field. So they're only like 3 feet tall, but it's all
Okay.
inflatable, the huge, like 50 feet long, 25 feet wide, and it just kind of encircles the field.
Hmm.
So the start line, I'm just thinking about different ways to use inflatables that would get me multiple at bats, if you will. Like a soccer league's not going to
Yeah.
just use your product one time. They have games every week of the year, and then there's always races in a big metropolitan area like Dallas Fort Worth.
Yeah.
Almost every week you could possibly have a race. The temperature, the weather is so temperate down here that running is a big thing. So I think just exploring what might be possible with the products that I have and other products that are inflatables that may not be for inflatable amusement in a traditional sense, but just branching out and figuring out where I can create value.
What a smart idea. I never even really thought of either of those things. I guess like you don't really think about it, but that's brilliant. And especially because now you have the running connection, you can kind of give a plug for yourself and be like, hey, I could do that.
Yeah.
And I don't know who has the job for it now, but you could be the new person for sure. That's
Yeah.
really cool. I like that idea for growth because I feel like there's only, if you only stick to one niche or one like venue type, that's the only type you can go after. But if you have multiple, and yeah, that's amazing. Very smart.
Thanks. Yeah, that's definitely the next phase is trying to figure out how to diversify and be able to leverage the relationships that I have, but also being able to serve new customers and new clientele.
Yeah. So do you think that a business like yours can really grow without losing that personal touch that you have?
Yes, that is one of the biggest challenges though, because as you know, growth requires you to be intentional about how you use your time and prioritize your efforts. And as you know, time is a finite resource, and most companies that I know are dealing with a finite set of human resources and
Mhm.
financial resources. So sometimes growth is like there are two edges to that sword. It's great to have more sales, but did I calculate how much more wear and tear that was going to be on my transportation fleet? Did I calculate
Mhm.
how much more I'll be paying because I have to employ two or three people now instead of just being able to do it on my own? I think that's the beauty about growth is it forces you to either be efficient or it might just reveal those areas that you really don't have a system or don't have a process. And
Mhm.
if you don't make a system or a process that's efficient, then growth is actually hindering your ability to sustain your business. So I think I've experienced both sides of that sword. And to the points I was trying to make earlier about putting protocols in place, like the cleaning and the warehouse organization. I mean, those are things that you sometimes only growth can help you see where there
Mhm.
are, deficiencies or, little, you've got to charge a system in order to see where the leaks are. And so that's the analogy I use with the business is like sometimes you're just, growth is like pressurizing your system so that you can see whether or not you have what it takes to operate efficiently and effectively.
Yeah, I think you're right on the money with that. I find that most businesses that try to grow without a system, they kind of find this cap that they can't
Yeah.
get past. Or if they try to get past it, they're losing out on customer service or some, products, something goes wrong. And you really can stress test it and see where is my process going wrong. And I think that does help you to grow because everything needs to be systematized and everything that from the moment that the person calls you and starts talking to you, from the moment that you're cleaning up and leaving the property, to even beyond that, when you're putting it back in the warehouse, you can't just leave
Mhm.
it there. So there is that whole system that needs to take place, and everybody needs to be on the same page. That
Yeah,
makes sense. But it sounds
alignment
like
has.
your system is pretty great, honestly. Like you sound like you've been doing it for long enough. You know what needs to be done, what doesn't need to be done, what's too much, what's too little.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you for that. If I were to critique my own system, the biggest critique I would give is that much of it is right here in my head, and less of it is like, here's the standard operating procedures, here's the manual. And so to go back to your last question, and what does the ideal operation look like? I think the ideal operation is less dependent on me as a person
Hmm.
and forces me to articulate what those protocols are so that it's real simple. It's like make sure you read all this and then there's just putting things in writing, memorializing things and documenting things so that they're easy to transfer to folks, I think is kind of the next step and one of those things that I'm sure many entrepreneurs struggle with, but
Hmm.
it's certainly one that I think it's about time now, 10 years in, to start thinking about how to hand this off, whether to a general manager, whether to my kids in 5 or 10 years. Like they're gonna need they're gonna need to they're gonna need to be able to experience what I'm going through today, and I may not be the one to be around to tell it. So I might as well start writing stuff down.
Yeah, I honestly would say most entrepreneurs go through that. I think a lot of times the stuff is stuck in their head, and because it's stuck in their head, then there's confusion on the other end, and maybe people are coming to them for questions that they think should be answerable, but they're not.
Hmm.
So, yeah, having that process and having every single step written down can eliminate some of those headaches of you being the bottleneck.
Yep.
'Cause that's what it
Yep.
ends up being. But, yeah, I appreciate that. I think it sounds like your systems are still pretty good, but you definitely need to get them out of your head onto paper,
Yep.
onto, like, a standardized format. I agree with that. Alright, so I have a couple more questions. What
Yep.
would you never change no matter how big this gets? Like, what is the line that you won't cross?
Um, generally the state line because of insurance reasons, but more specifically, I think if I am not able to confidently say that I can give the level of service that my customers are used to, then it actually doesn't benefit me to send out a product that I'm not 100% confident in.
Mhm.
Whether that's, this employee may not be trained enough to go do that, or I'm not familiar with how this customer talks to, or how this employee talks to customers. I think the line is, do I continue to trust the level of service and the quality and the value that I am conveying and giving to the customer? Whenever that's questioned, whenever I feel like, the value is diminishing, the quality of the product is diminishing, then it's really time to reevaluate what I'm doing and how this fits into my life, because I would just as soon not do this than do this poorly.
Yeah, I agree. And that goes back to your reputation. You want your reputation to be exactly what your company actually stands for. Allowing for subpar work or allowing for someone that doesn't understand the process of how you would deal with customers could potentially, ruin that reputation. So I agree. All right. So this last section, I call this kind of the quick fire round. It's just a couple questions. What would you say is like your most memorable job that you did? I know you mentioned the Tony
Yeah,
Romo one. Is that it?
yeah. No, see, most memorable. I think it's a regular customer, but I wasn't prepared. I just brought me and their water slide. When you get in this business, you realize water weighs 7.5 pounds a gallon.
Oh my God.
And if you leave the water hose on a water slide when you and your kid go into your living room and start, watching the game or eating cake, then it's easy for that huge water slide to fill up with water inside where the air is supposed to go.
Oh no.
And so a piece of vinyl that already weighs 400 pounds can easily balloon to a 600-pound animal with just a few gallons of water in it. And so the memorable job I have is having to ask the customer to help me get the dolly up his hill um, in his backyard. And I'm wearing like, clothes that I'm gonna do a bounce house in, and this gentleman's wearing like a button down shirt, and like he's got his casual clothes on for his kid party. Um, and so as much as I hated to impose, there,
Yeah.
physically, I had to get that unit into the back of my truck, and there was no other option other than to ask for help. So, um, I try to be prepared, and I'm mortified of that. But luckily I maintained a customer. But I think there's a very clear line, and like, you know, if I'm actually there to provide a service, that I provide the entire service and not provide like 80% of it and then be like, well, I actually need you to help me with the final piece. It's really heavy. So that's the memorable piece that I have is having Eric, his name is Eric, having Eric help me take a huge water slide up his hill in his backyard, because he has chickens and
Oh
roosters
my
and
God.
other critters running around, and so it's a decent sized backyard, and there's only one way to get from in the bounce house, and the water slide was down at the bottom of the hill, because that's the flat area
Oh
where the kids like
God.
to play. So we had to go all the way up the hill and into the alley with a 600-pound bounce house that was full of water.
Oh my God. I think that really shows that you're human though.
Mhm.
Like he probably was just like, okay, yep, things happen.
Yeah, yeah,
At
yeah,
least you kept him as a customer, so it didn't affect
absolutely.
him that much.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. We had a good laugh about it, but I when I left, I was like, I'm pretty sure he did not envision that that would be part of his party experience was getting a workout in with me.
At least it was at the end, right?
True, true.
That's hilarious. What was the funniest or most expected thing that's happened to you on a job? Was it that?
Um, Funniest thing, unexpected. That's a tough one. I think there have been occasions in which a customer has moved a bounce house, and so we kind of not kind of we in the contract we agree that I'm setting it up and I'm leaving it in you know a safe state to operate. When you get back on the premises and the customer has moved it, first of all, you're like, wow, how'd you do that? This thing's really heavy. I always have to roll them up and then move them and then set them up again. Um, but yeah, that's I've been on a couple occasions where you get back on Sunday after installing a unit on Saturday, and it's like, how did this get configured in a different way? Because we stake these things down with 18-inch stakes into the
Oh
pavement,
my
into the
God.
ground, or use several 50-pound or 60-pound sandbags to tether them down. So um, that you always wonder. It's like, how many people did you have helping you move this thing?
That's
And why did
actually
you and
hilarious.
why did you specifically do something that the contract calls for you not to do? But they
It's
had
because
fun.
people don't
So
listen or pay attention. That's why.
yeah, true, true.
That's hilarious. All right. What is one piece of advice for someone who just got into this type of business? For someone that wants to start like an entertainment or a rentals company,
Yeah.
what piece of advice would you give?
Do what's manageable that you can do at a high level. Um, it's really easy to try to be all things to all people, but all businesses have to have a lane that they're in. It could be a wide lane, but you've got to have a lane that defines you. So I would encourage anyone who wants to get into any business, but specifically like event rental business, I would just ask them first to survey whether or not they enjoy and love people, because you're going to deal with a ton of people. If you don't like people, you can still be an entrepreneur, I suppose, but probably not one that deals with people a lot. And I don't know what business that is that doesn't actually deal with people. And so that would be my encouragement is like, you kind of have to love people to be in a people facing business. And if you don't, then I think that's going to show and ultimately diminish the efforts that you're trying to undertake in the future.
Yeah, you'd be surprised how many entrepreneurs I've met that don't generally like people, and usually their businesses don't do very well. So
Yeah.
that's probably the reason why, because they
Yeah.
don't understand that customer service aspect. They don't understand, dealing with customers can be hard. Sometimes they have unreasonable demands. Sometimes they do things that are maybe strange, but you just
Yeah.
have to roll with it. And, they're ultimately paying you at the end of the day. So you do have to be patient and like them. So
Yeah.
I get that.
All
All
day.
right, just the last question. What is the biggest lesson that you learned that cost you the most, but glad you learned it?
Trust but verify. To steal the old, I don't know, what, maybe that's a presidential thing from Reagan, but I think I've had you been in business long enough. You get customers um, that aren't who they say they are and are actually trying to scam you.
Oh,
And so I've dealt with, I've been burned a couple of times and lost you know significant sums of money
wow.
dealing with customers that aren't who they say they are and are just trying to pull a fast one. And so I would say if it sounds too good to be true, it generally is. And sometimes when you're busiest and you're just trying to like make sure you serve the customer correctly, if you don't have a process to vet the customer, which often you never really show up on the property until the day of the event.
Hmm.
So I would say in any business, shrewdness is important, but in a way that still values customers and treats people well with respect. You can be too cynical as a business owner as well, and I'm trying to find the balance that's like a healthy level of cynicism or skepticism, maybe more accurate, but also like the willingness to help the customer, selflessly and authentically and with my whole heart. So just finding the balance between being too giving or too trusting and just too optimistic, and also just being a realist that not every customer is truly having the intention of being who they say they are. There
Hmm.
really are folks in every industry who are out to try to pull a fast one and take advantage of people.
I think that's really good advice. That's something that I learned early on as well, that maybe I was a little bit too trusting in certain people or let them get maybe behind on too many payments. And I realized that you have to have like a process for that to make sure you
Hmm.
vet them better and, have like a hard cutoff or a hard stop, I guess you could say. So that's very smart. I really appreciate you doing Sorry, I really appreciate you doing this with me, Korey. This was really, I love this conversation. Like, I learned a lot from you. I think you own it's an amazing business. I've seen you in action. I feel like your customer service is spot on. I know you treat the customers right. And it's been awesome seeing you grow too since we met, what, 5 years ago,
6 years
6 years
ago
ago.
now. Wasn't it during COVID?
You're
Or was it
right.
right after COVID, right? I thought
It
we
was
went through
right out.
COVID
I think it
together.
was
Yeah.
yeah, I think it was around
Probably
COVID. So
April of 2020, I think.
yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's great.